All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, and we do have some folks joining us for the first time, including our speaker today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And so as you may know, February is always our biggest month. We kick out all the men and spend the entire month solely showcasing incredible women in science and exploration from across the globe. And we are doing that this year bigger and better than ever. In addition to the 35 plus broadcasts we're doing, we spent the weekend of February 12th through 14th doing our epic Women Blaze Trails Festival, where we did 50 programs in 3 days, all showcasing women from across the globe. So if you haven't seen womenblazetrails.com, all our speaker list, those sessions are all up on our YouTube channel now too. It's just been an incredible month. So for this program, I'm particularly excited because, as I said, we do have a new speaker today. We are joined live by Carlee Jackson, and she has the job that I love what I do. I have a great job. It's fantastic. But Carlee gets to do what I would love to do, which is rescue and showcase and research sea turtles and sharks, two of the coolest kinds of creatures on this planet. She's been an environmental educator. She's been a guide. She co-founded an organization that works to get more Black women and communities of color into shark science. She is doing it all. She's amazing. I'm so excited to have her with us today. And so for our live classes, for our groups on YouTube, welcoming in Carlee Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us today, Carlee, and take us away.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first time. I'm really excited to speak to you guys about my two favorite animals ever, sharks and sea turtles. So I get the best of both worlds. Not mad about that. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about shark and sea turtle conservation. I am a shark conservationist and a marine turtle specialist at a place called Gumbo Limbo Nature Center. I'm going to start out just by telling you guys what I do for my work and just like a little bit of background of myself, and then we'll dive right into shark and sea turtle conservation and what are sharks, what are sea turtles, and all that fun stuff. So let's get going. So I work at a place called Gumbo Limbo Nature Center. It is in Boca Raton, Florida. It's a small little city in South Florida. Sunny most of the time. So this nature center, we have aquariums, and our biggest thing is our sea turtle hospital. So we have a rehabilitation center that cares for sick and injured sea turtles, and we nurse them back to health as best as we can. And our main goal is to release these turtles back out into the wild. So these are just some pictures of me having fun with some of our patients that were there for various reasons. This first picture, it's me and a Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. They're a rare species of turtle, and they don't get very big, but this was a little guy that had a boat injury strike. And this little turtle right here, that's a green sea turtle, and it looks very amused right now. And very cute. I can't remember what was wrong with this sea turtle, but that turtle was pretty healthy and ready to go right back out in the ocean. So I'll tell you a little bit more about some of our residents and our patients there and some of the procedures that we do. So we get a lot of different types of injuries on sea turtles. So a common one we get is predator attack. So this first picture that we see in the top left corner, that sea turtle, her name was Euphorbia, and she was attacked by a shark. And this is our vet just stitching up and cleaning up one of her wounds. She was bit on her flipper. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to use that flipper very well. And I do believe that her flipper was broken. But we were able to successfully heal her and help get that flipper back up to strength. And she was able to go right back out in the ocean and swim like a healthy sea turtle. So yeah, those are some of the injuries that we get. Another injury or sickness that we get, it is a disease called FP. So it's a herpes virus type disease, and it causes all of these tumors to grow on the turtle. And it's kind of nasty looking, and it's very like ill. It's my least favorite thing that we get at the at the hospital. But we are able to help these turtles by removing the tumors. It's a really cool procedure that our vet does. She uses like a laser to just get all the tumors off. And this turtle that we see right here, he is doing a spa day at the rehabilitation center. So this turtle, what we do is put honey. We put raw honey on his wounds. So he has some wounds right here from the removal of those tumors. They heal right up and they're able to go right back out in the ocean. So this turtle, we put honey on his wounds and we laid him upside down so that he can just bathe in the honey, and it feels really nice to them. You can see he's really chilled out. We put a little pillow under his head. It's really cute. And yeah, so raw honey, fun fact, it is nature's neosporin. So as long as the honey is raw and organic, you can put it on your own wounds and it helps your wounds heal. And it's a natural antibiotic, antifungal, all these awesome things. Mother Nature is amazing. And then we also have some resident sea turtles. So some sea turtles, they're not able to be released back out into the wild because their injuries are just so extreme that there's no way that they would be able to survive on their own in the wild. So this turtle that we have right here, her name is Kane, after the Miami Hurricanes, University of Miami. And she was the victim of a predator attack as well. So unfortunately, both of her flippers, they're little nubs. So she can't swim very well. So we keep her in our mangrove tank, which is a very shallow water tank. And she's able to live there and she eats. She's getting really big. I think we've had her for about almost 2 years now. So she's just been with us. She's one of our residents. We have 2 permanent residents, and I'll show you one of our other residents in a little bit. And this picture at the bottom, this is us releasing one of our sea turtles. I can't remember that turtle's name, but she was very healthy and able to be released back out in the ocean. So those are really fun for us because it's just like, yes, we did a good job. We nursed this turtle back to health and it's able to get back out and do what turtles are supposed to do, which is be out in the ocean, swimming, doing turtley things. Another cool thing that actually just happened recently at our rehab facility, we got some cold stun Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. So I'm sure you guys might have heard about the cold stun turtles in Texas. They had 8,000 sea turtles just stunned in the water because the water's too cold. Sea turtles are reptiles, so they're cold-blooded. So they rely on their environment to keep them warm. So if the water's cold, they kind of just like freeze up and they can't move. They don't have any way of warming their body. So these sea turtles are from New England Aquarium. So they had really cold water this year. And unfortunately, some of the Kemps, they kind of just freeze and they just sit there and they can't really do anything. And that's not good for the turtle because they have to swim around, they have to come up to breathe. So yeah, the New England Aquarium got, I believe, almost 2,000 turtles and we got 20 of them. So they sent 20 sea turtles to us. And these are just some of the patients. We have to paint letters on them so that we know which one is which. And our theme was like animal names. So each turtle was named after a specific animal. But yeah, Kemp's Ridleys are really cool. This was my first time working with Kemp's Ridley species from the cold stun events. But yeah, and this one in this bottom right corner, that's my favorite little Kemp's. His name is Puffin. And Puffin likes to show us just how big and scary he is by opening his mouth when it's time to give him his medicine or when it's time to give him, you know, some shots because he's got to get better. But yeah, he likes to show off and just tell us like, I'm big and you can't touch me, but it's kind of funny. It's really cute. But yeah, and then this is one of our other permanent residents. So this is Morgan. Morgan is a green sea turtle, and she has been at Gumbo Limbo for about 4 or 5 years, probably going on 5 years. And she's still like a juvenile subadult, so she is not fully grown yet. So Morgan gets lettuce. She gets lettuce bars in the morning and in the afternoon because green sea turtles, they're vegetarians. So they like munching on lettuce. We give her green peppers and cucumbers, and she absolutely loves it. And honestly, I'd say that this turtle probably eats a lot healthier than I do. I probably should eat some salads and some vegetables every once in a while. But yeah, Morgan was the victim of a boat strike. So A boat hit her and her shell was cracked, and it unfortunately damaged part of her spine. So her back flippers, she can't use her back flippers very well. And also air bubbles embedded themselves under her shell. So just think about if you had, like, we call it bubble butt. So literally her shell just, her butt floats up because she has air bubbles in her shell. And unfortunately, we can't get those air bubbles out because they are they're microscopic and they just embed themselves. They just insert themselves in the tissue. So there's nothing we can do. We can't release her back out in the wild because she can't swim to the bottom on her own. We actually have to attach a weight to the back of her shell in order for her to swim like a normal turtle and be able to dive down and everything. So if we had that weight on her out in the wild, that weight easily could just knock off, she could knock it off. And the weight has to be changed as she gets bigger. So she is our permanent resident. She is here to stay. Some other work that I do is beach work. So sea turtle nesting season starts in March and it goes from March to October. So I'm out on the beach every morning at sunrise or right before sunrise, and we're marking sea turtle nests. And I'll talk about sea turtle nests and everything a little bit later in the presentation, but what I do is go out and we mark the sea turtle nests because sea turtles are an endangered species and they're protected by the government. So we have to protect their nests. We put barriers around their nests to make sure no one steps on them, no one goes and messes with the eggs, but sea turtles do come up on the beach to nest. They lay their eggs and then they go right back out in the ocean. Oh, this is one of our nests that are fully marked and everything with the tape and the signs that say, "Do not touch, this is a sea turtle nest." And another perk of my job is with sea turtle nests come sea turtle hatchlings. So nests usually take about 2 months to actually hatch. So we get to see little hatchlings, and sometimes we'll bring some hatchlings back if they're too weak to go back out on their own, and we'll try to release them a little later. But like I said, I'm going to go a little further into sea turtle nesting a little bit later in the presentation. But here are some cute little hatchling pictures for you to just say, "Aw," at. And these are little loggerhead hatchlings, and this is a little green sea turtle hatchling. And we'll go into different species and stuff in a little bit too. So the next cool part of my job and just what I do is I work with sharks. So I'm a shark conservationist. My research in grad school was with sharks, and I'll go into my specific research in a little bit as well. But the lab that I worked in at school was called the CMED lab. It stands for Conservation, Movement, and Ecosystem Dynamics. And I went to school at Nova Southeastern University, and I'm currently the Director of Communications and co-founder of an organization called Minorities in Shark Science. And this is an organization that is trying to uplift and highlight the different diverse voices in shark science that are usually not highlighted or not uplifted. And we're also trying to increase diversity in the field of shark science because it is not very diverse at all. So we're trying to make some changes in shark science, and there are just some really awesome women of color in shark science that people don't know about, but we're getting their names out there. So yeah, at the lab, I usually, I've been working with them with tagging. So we'll go off the coast of Broward County. We'll lay some lines out, and when we catch sharks, we tag them. So we tag them for research. We take data from them in order to contribute to different research. So for example, in this top picture right here, we take measurements of our sharks. We always measure our sharks, and we take that data, and that data is for that specific shark. So we tag our sharks. You can see right here, there's like a little, it's called a roto tag. It's kind of like a tag that you would see on a cow, like an ear tag for a cow. And that tag number is very unique and specific to that shark. So if we ever catch that shark again, we're going to have all the data on that shark, and then we'll be able to retake data on that shark to see what has changed. Maybe the shark has grown, maybe he's eating something different, but but we do take fin clip samples from the sharks because when we taking those samples, we can actually do some cool chemistry on it and be able to tell what the shark's been eating. We can also do genetic samples to see, you know, what different, how different sharks are related, and it's really cool. It's really cool work. And I also work with this organization called the Field School. That's what the little logos right here are. Field School is in Miami, and I do some shark tagging work with them as well. They work with all types of sharks. So we get small, tiny little sharks. This is a black-nosed shark, and this shark really isn't going to get very much bigger. It's a very, very small species of shark. And this is one of the crew members taking blood samples from the shark, and they actually look to see how sharks handle stress and just the different blood chemistry in the shark. And we just do a lot of really cool research. And sharks are my favorite animals. Sea turtles are my second. So I have so much fun when I do shark tagging, and it's really exciting and it's really cool. All right, so we're gonna dive right into sharks and sea turtles, and I'm going to just give you guys a little overview of what I'm gonna talk about. So first, we're gonna start out with sharks. We're gonna talk about what are sharks. We're gonna talk about what different threats sharks face, why are sharks important, and then we'll get into some of the research that I did in school. And then we'll move on to sea turtles. We'll talk about what are sea turtles, different species of sea turtles that I work with, turtle trouble, so just different threats that sea turtles face, and some of the research that I do at Gumbo Limbo. All right, so first off, what is a shark? Sharks, fun fact, they are a type of fish. So a lot of people say fish are different from sharks, but really, in reality, sharks are just a modified type of fish. So they both live in the water, they both need gills to breathe, and they both have kind of the same types of fins and use their fins for the same thing. So sharks are just a modified, cooler version of fish. So they're in a class of animals called chondrichthyes. So that's a big word, but it basically just means that sharks don't have bony skeletons, they have cartilage skeletons. So if you guys wiggle your ears, touch your ears, or like touch your nose and you see how flexible it is, that's because it's made out of cartilage. And that's what sharks' entire skeleton are made out of. It's made out of straight cartilage, and their skeletons are very flexible, so they can be very flexible in the water, and it's very lightweight as well. Sharks, oh yeah, skeleton made of cartilage. So sharks are specifically in a subclass of chondrichthyes called elasmobranchs. So elasmobranchs include both sharks and rays. So we've got a little southern stingray right here. So sharks and rays are actually cousins. So sharks and rays, they both have this sensory organ called ampullae of Lorenzini, and we're going to go into what that is. But it's a sensory organ that both of these animals have, and that's what makes them closely related. So I'll go into some differences between sharks and fish because sharks and fish are very different, even though sharks are fish. So we're going to just go into what makes them different, what makes sharks so unique. So we'll first go into what I think is pretty obvious, which is the gills. So we see the gills on the fish. They have one gill slit right there, and they usually have this bony plate covering the gills called the operculum, and it just protects their gills. Then sharks, on the other hand, they have way more than one gill slit. So they usually have 5 to 7 gill slits. 5 is the average. 6 or 7 is like really unique. There's the sharks that have 6 or 7 are called the 6-gill sharks and the 7-gill shark. So there's really only 2 types of sharks that have more than 5 gills. But yeah, so sharks They also don't have a bony plate that's covering their gills. And basically, sharks have more gills because they are, one, they're just a bigger animal, and it allows them to take in more oxygen from the water. So fish, they don't need as much energy as sharks and as much oxygen to take out from the water because they're not as big as sharks. And sharks, just being a larger animal and just more specialized in its environment, they have more gill slits that just help it, help it be a better shark. Another cool thing, a really cool difference, I think, between sharks and fish are their scales. So fish have these scales, they're rounded and, they're just regular fish scales. They're kind of slimy. But sharks, their skin is literally made out of teeth. It is called dermal denticles. Dermal denticles translates to teeth skin. So if you were to look at shark skin under the microscope, this is what you would see. So you think sharks have enough teeth in their mouth, but they have teeth all over their skin. And I just think that's so cool. So if you ever go to an aquarium that has like a touch tank for sharks that have like tiny little bamboo sharks in the tanks that you can touch, if you touch from the head to the tail, it's going to be smooth. But if you rub from the tail to the head, it's going to be really rough and it's going to feel like sandpaper. So if you've ever felt sandpaper, that's exactly how shark skin feels like. So it just feels like really rough sandpaper. And the reason that sharks have skin made out of teeth is because it helps them swim in the water a lot better. So that word is called hydrodynamic. So it just makes them literally, they cut through the water. It helps them swim faster. And it's also a form of protection as well. So it makes their skin really tough. So if there's a bigger shark out there trying to get a smaller shark, it's going to have a little hard time biting through. And each species of sharks have different types of dermal denticles, which I think is even more mind-blowing. So like the faster sharks, like the mako sharks, their dermal denticles are shaped differently than, say, a nurse shark that just lays on the bottom all day. Because mako sharks are like the fastest shark in the sea. So they have to have dermal denticles that are shaped to help them move faster in the water. Nurse sharks, on the other hand, they just sit at the bottom. So their dermal denticles are not shaped the same way as, say, a mako shark's dermal denticles would be shaped. So I think dermal denticles are really cool. It's just a really cool research. And if you ever have time to Google dermal denticles, just look at all the microscope pictures because I just think they're really cool looking. So another thing that sharks have and rays have that is different than fish, that puts them in that class of elasmobranchs, they have this superpower called ampullae of Lorenzini. So sharks, they're able to sense bioelectric fields, and they're doing this by using these tiny organs that are usually right up under their snout, and they're called ampullae of Lorenzini. So you can kind of see on this hammerhead, it's got little spots all around here. You can especially see them right here, but those are their ampullae of Lorenzini. So here's a little bit more up close of it. So these little speckles, they're actually pores. So if your face has pores, so they're little circles in your face and they just are filled with different things. But ampullae of Lorenzini, their pores, they're filled with this gel. And basically when an animal is moving, it gives off electrical signals. So your muscles are giving off signals, your heart rate is giving off signals, and those signals travel through the water and into the ampullae of Lorenzini of sharks, and they can actually sense that, they can feel that. And specifically with hammerhead sharks, this is a great hammerhead, they eat stingrays. And stingrays like to hide under the sand. So it makes it hard for predators to really find them. Well, hammerhead sharks, they're really cool because their whole head it's basically a metal detector. So they go around on the sand, just like using their metal detector head to find these stingrays. And in reality, they're using their ampullae of Lorenzini to locate these stingrays. They're looking for those electrical signals. And different research has actually tested like magnets. They put magnets under the sand and different things like batteries that have to give off electrical signals to see if the shark can find it, or if it just like makes the shark kind of wig out a little bit. And they did see that the sharks were able to find the batteries, and the batteries giving off a different signal. It kind of gives the shark a sensory overload because it's just like a whole lot of signals coming at that shark. So sharks are really cool. I think the ampullae of Lorenzini is like a cool superpower that sharks have. And sharks, they can't feel these vibrations from or these electrical signals from super far away. Usually prey has to be pretty close to them in order for them to really detect those electrical signals. So don't worry if you're in the water and your like heart rate is fast. Sharks aren't like sensing your heart rate going fast or anything. They have to be pretty close to you in order to sense those electrical signals. All right, so now we'll go into some threats that shark populations unfortunately have. So there's been research that just came out last year. Unfortunately, we are seeing a major decline in all of our shark populations around the world. So I believe in the study, they saw that in, I think about 20% of the world's coral reefs saw a huge decline in their shark population. So 20% of the world's reefs had little to no sharks in them. And that is really concerning because sharks are just a really important part of coral reefs. So unfortunately, that is happening. And this is due to a lot of different things. There's a high demand for their fins and for meat. Some places they eat sharks. Even here in the US, some people go out and catch sharks and they eat them. And that's fine unless you're doing it too much. And that really is the issue, is that too much of it is happening and shark populations aren't able to bounce back as fast. Also bycatch. So this picture right here, the commercial fishing boat, so the big boat that goes out and catches all the fish for us to eat, they were really trying to get all of these fish, but unfortunately the shark got caught up in the net as well. And that is called bycatch. So it's when you catch something that you weren't intentionally trying to catch. And that happens a lot because those commercial fishing boats, they usually have huge nets, just like nets that are bigger than you can even fathom, just out there. They're dragging them along and they're picking up all these fish, but they can accidentally pick up a shark too. And not just sharks, they can pick up sharks, they can pick up turtles, they can pick up any other animal that they're not trying to get, but it can get caught up in those nets. So that's a big problem for sharks as well. Effects of climate change is a really big problem on sharks. So sharks, they adapt to their environments pretty well, but sharks are really, really, really old. Their evolutionary history goes back 400 million years. That's before trees even came around. And that really just shows us that they adapt to change very, very slowly. So climate change is happening, and climate change is happening pretty quickly, and sharks really aren't able to adapt to those changes as quickly. So unfortunately, we could start seeing declines in shark populations directly due to climate change, and that's not very good. And going off of climate change causes loss of habitat. So coral reefs are being absolutely blasted by climate change right now because of the warmer waters, higher acidity in the water as well. And coral reefs are a pretty important environment for sharks to be able to live and have healthy fish populations to prey on. So if these habitats are lost for them, they really have nowhere to live and nowhere to really have a healthy source of food. So these are all threats that sharks are facing. yeah, coral reef damage, development from development, like just building in the water, just boats in the water as well. Oil spills are a big threat to sharks. Dredging as well. Dredging is when you're just like basically like think of it as like shoveling in the water, but like gigantic shovels in the water, and that really causes damage to a lot of coral reefs. But yeah, and sharks live for a pretty long time, and that's why all of these threats on them are so big for them. That's why it's such a big thing that these threats are happening. It's such a big pressure on sharks because it takes them a long time to be able to reproduce. So sharks, they usually don't, depending on the species, it either takes them 7 years or 20 years to be able to reproduce. Sharks can live up to like 60 years old. The oldest shark, though, is like 400 or 500 years old, but that's a whole different story. The Greenland shark, put that on your Google list as well. But because it takes them so long to reproduce, it takes them a long time to adapt to these changes. So if you're taking a lot of the population of sharks out of the water due to these threats, they're not able to bounce back very quickly because it takes them a long time to reproduce. So yeah, this is why sharks are kind of having a bad time right now, but hopefully with a lot of research and everything, we're trying to get their populations to bounce back. So really all of that to say, why is shark conservation important? Why are sharks important? People think of sharks and they're just like, like they're just these animals in the water. They look cool, they're kind of scary, and why are they important? Don't they eat people? Like, what? The answer is sharks keep our oceans healthy. So sharks are an essential part to our oceans. If we were to take sharks out of the picture, our oceans would just like completely decline. The health of the oceans would go down. Sharks maintain balance in the prey population. So if sharks were to go away, their prey would just reproduce and just completely overrun certain environments. And then sharks also feed on the sick and unhealthy fish, and this helps prevent the spread of disease. So usually the fish or like the animals that sharks prey on, they're unhealthy or they're just like sickly, and they're kind of the easier ones to pick off. But if sharks weren't in the picture, those diseases could just spread. So sharks are very, very important for our ocean's health. And usually if there are no sharks in an area, that is a very unhealthy area in that ocean, unhealthy environment. So I'll talk a little bit about my research. So my graduate research I conducted in Belize. So I went to a place called Shark Ray Village in Keekalker, Belize. So the name of my project was looking at the effects of provisioning tourism on nurse sharks in Belize. So nurse sharks, they're like my favorite sharks. They're super cute. They're not very sharky looking. Like when you think of a shark, you usually don't think of a nurse shark. And all of these are all nurse sharks. They're very chill, and they're benthic sharks. So they are usually found on the bottom in shallow water, and just like chilling up under a coral reef or just a rock. And they're pretty lazy, and they're really cute. But shark tourism, it is a really popular thing around the world, especially in small tropical countries that have really nice environments, nice coral reefs, and just really pretty healthy oceans. So people will go out and, they want to see sharks because sharks are cool. And shark tourism is becoming popular because, sharks kind of get a bad rep, and people want to put it on their bucket list that they want to go swim with sharks. And shark tourism can really include anything, like you're going out in the wild and you're snorkeling with sharks, you're diving with sharks, or even like cage diving with sharks. So that's all shark tourism. And specifically provisioning tourism, that's a new word, provisioning. It basically just means feeding. So provisioning tourism is used to attract wildlife to an area. So sharks, they are naturally scared of humans. Believe it or not, we are aliens to them, and they look at us and they're like, what is that? And they go the other way. I've seen it happen. And since food is such an important resource to them, it kind of cuts off that fear and says, ooh, there's food, but there's a human, but there's food. And food is really important to them. So they'll go to an area if there's food readily available. So tour guides will throw food in the water in order to attract sharks to an area. And then tourists will get in the water and just swim with the sharks, or just hang out and see the sharks eating while the tour guides are feeding them. So the specific area that I went to was called Shark Ray Village. And like I said, it was in Keekulker. It's a small island off the coast of Belize. So this place, they fed the sharks and the stingrays there. So yeah, this is a video of sharks feeding at one of the boats. So the tour guides would just throw food in the water and the sharks would just love it. They just came up to the surface and was eating the food. People were just snorkeling around and taking pictures and everything. So my research, I looked at how this activity was affecting the sharks' behavior. I looked at how it was affecting their habituation, so how attracted they were to the area and how they would just kind of automatically come to the area and just ignore the fact that there are humans there. And I also looked at the abundance. So I looked to see how many sharks were in Shark Ray Village and compared it to areas that were outside of Shark Ray Village. So in a nutshell, I found that all three of these things, the behavior, the habituation, and the abundance, it was all affected by provisioning tourism. So nurse sharks, naturally, they are nocturnal. So nocturnal means that they are active at night and resting during the day. So nurse sharks are usually found sleeping under rocks during the day and just being lazy, not moving a lot. And then at night, that's when they become active and they start feeding. But here in Shark Ray Village, it is the complete opposite. These guys are very active during the day. They're eating during the day. They're always moving around during the day. I don't know what they were doing at night because I wasn't able to go to that area at night, but I suspect that they were probably just sleeping and chilling at night. But yeah, and I also saw that these guys were very attracted to boats. They were, as soon as the boats came in, all of a sudden, like 30 nurse sharks would just appear out of nowhere. So they could hear that boat engine and just know that there's food coming. And I also saw that there were just so many, the Shark Ray Village was so dense with nurse sharks that I really found like no other nurse sharks outside of Shark Ray Village. And this could be due to a lot of different things, like maybe the sharks outside of Shark Ray Village were actually being normal nurse sharks and hiding under rocks and I just couldn't see them. And they were actually being active at night. But it still kind of shows that this area is there's just a lot of nurse sharks in that area. I did mostly video surveys for my research. So I would record all the sharks and then go back later and record different behaviors that I saw. And I also used that to look at the different numbers of sharks in different areas. So people like to ask me, so is tourism bad? And me being a scientist, I can never answer a question with just yes or no. And my answer is always, well, it depends. So here in Shark Ray Village, I did see some negative effects of the sharks being fed there. So this picture right here at the bottom, my mouse. So you can see how close these sharks are to the boat propeller. And I said earlier that the sharks are very attracted to the boat engine noise. So because of that, they would kind of stick around where the boat engine was, because that's also where the fishermen would feed them, or the tour guides would feed them. But that's also where the boat propellers are. So if those tour guides were to just turn on their engine and just go, those sharks were right there. And unfortunately, some of the sharks were getting hit by the propellers. And you can see this shark has old wounds from propeller strikes. So their fins are supposed to be nice and straight and pretty, but this one has all types of notches on them. We did see other sharks that had the same thing. They had strikes on their body, on different parts of their fin. Some of their fins were pretty bad. So that is a negative effect that I saw. Now, this can be taken away. This effect can be less of a problem for these sharks if the tour guides put covers on their boat propellers. So in some whale tourism, tour guides will actually put boat propeller covers on their propellers so they don't hit whales when they're doing tours with tourists. So these guys in Sharkray Village could do the same thing so that they're not really causing damage to these sharks if they are too close to the propeller. So my answer is it depends, because it depends on the management of the area. So if you have bad management of the area, so you're not really regulating, people do whatever they want with the sharks, they can touch them, they can grab them, they can not have boat propeller covers on them, then that's bad for the sharks, and that's not very good. But if it's managed very well, making sure that the sharks aren't being touched, the sharks are given a lot of space, and also just feeding in general is very unnatural for the sharks. So better tourism would really just be not feeding the sharks. But yeah, so it really depends on how the area is being managed. So that is my answer for, is tourism bad? And this is just a fun video at the top of these sharks having a good time, eating some fish and just sucking it up. But yeah. So that was my research, and I'm going to quickly go into sea turtles.
Carlee, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We've only actually got about 5 more minutes in the whole broadcast, and I really want to make sure we have time for some questions with the groups. So what we'll do, if it's okay with you, is I would love to dive in with sea turtles, but we can bring you in for another epic sea turtle program and highlight all of that, because I know our classes are actually leaving for their next period in about 10 minutes. So I want to give them a chance, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Awesome. So there you go. Sneak peek classes for sea turtle stuff. We got a little bit at the beginning, which was kind of awesome. But yes, we covered so much today. Holy, I don't think we've ever actually talked about shark tourism, which is really exciting. So thank you for that, Carlee.
No problem.
So yes, guys, I want to dive in. Mr. Shattuck's class is joining us in Chalk River, Ontario. And by the way, Carlee, we have an additional 11 classes alongside our live ones. So there's 15 classes in this broadcast, which is easily 350 plus kids from all over the world.
Oh my goodness. Hey, everyone.
Right from where you are, right near across the street in Florida, there's a junior school affiliated with your university that's involved today. So that's really exciting as well.
That's really cool.
So Mr. Shattuck, come on in, guys, if you have a question.
Hi, I would like to know which shark is more common, the most common shark.
So it depends on where you are. Where I was in Belize, I would definitely say that nurse sharks are very common. And really, I guess around the world, it would be nurse sharks and reef sharks. Usually reef sharks are pretty common everywhere. But yeah, it really just depends on where you are. Here in Florida, common sharks are definitely the black tip sharks and spinner sharks. But yeah, it depends. But those are just some species that are common everywhere.
Yeah, great question, guys. And again, if you ever get a chance to go to an aquarium to feel a shark skin, Carlee was talking about that earlier. It is one of the coolest experiences you can have. I liken it to a seatbelt. I've always thought it's kind of like that. I don't know. I sandpaper. Good analogies galore. Carrie, so Miss Langer's class, if you guys have one in Coburg, come on in and go for it.
We do. Tatiana, we're going to come back to the turtles then. Tatiana wanted to know, what are some differences, physical differences between turtles, or are they all basically the same physiologically?
That is an awesome question. So all sea turtles are very different from each other. The largest sea turtle is a leatherback sea turtle, and they can get up to 2,000 pounds and 9 feet long. The smallest sea turtle can get up to 150 pounds. The biggest sea turtle I've seen is 400 pounds, but each sea turtle eats different things. And the leatherback sea turtle, for example, it only eats jellyfish, which blows my mind. And they are deep divers. So they're specially equipped with very soft shells so they can dive really deep, like 1 mile to 2 miles under the water, and they won't be crushed by all that pressure. They can actually, their shells can decompress and, uncompress, and it's really cool. So each sea turtle is very special in its own way.
Yeah, they are really amazing. One of our biggest partners here has been the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida, with the original bubble butt, by the way. You mentioned that.
Yes.
Really cool. So for our classes, if you want to see some of those huge honking sea turtles, they're like several hundred pounds, check out their programs. Leatherbacks are just they're the coolest creature in the world. They're just so amazing.
They are.
Great question, guys. All right, Miss Perlowski's class, where we've got like this interesting camera view of you guys. So Miss Perlowski's group is joining us in Toronto, down the street from me. If you have a question for us, just unmute your mic and you're good to go.
Hi. So we were just wondering if you have ever seen any shark attacks, and then also if the tourism could possibly be increasing chances for shark attacks.
Yeah, so I've never seen a shark attack, thank goodness. And tourism, it could in certain areas. So if there are certain areas that the way you're supposed to do tourism is make sure you're not in areas that swimmers really go and just like relax or anything. You're supposed to do tourism far away from where there are any recreational swimmers or anything. But if you are doing bad tourism, it can pose a problem for regular swimmers. So if tour guides hand feed sharks or have food in a certain area, there actually has been a shark attack where there were swimmers just in the water and a shark bit the hand of a person and they bit the side of the person. And turns out that's where the tour guides were feeding the sharks. They had food in their hand and on their side. So that could pose a problem for people in the water if there's tourism around. But like I said, if it's good, then you'll do that tourism far away from where anyone's swimming.
I'm really happy you touched upon tourism, because ecotourism is increasingly a topic that we cover in a lot of our broadcasts around the world. And when it's done well, it can be a real source for good for animals, for the communities nearby, and it can be also done very poorly. So it's nice to contrast those two. We're getting a lot of shark attack questions in the chat. I want to highlight, shark attacks are so rare.
So rare.
More people get crushed by vending machines and get knocked on the head by coconuts and die every year than shark attacks. So it's it's almost never going to happen. Not something that you need to worry about on your day-by-day.
Yeah.
Let's head to LC4, our group, Miss Shank's class. If you guys have a question for us, come on in, unmute that mic, and then we'll wrap up with Miss Lagerquist in just a second.
Yeah, we have a couple questions. One is, how deep can a shark dive? And the second question that I actually have is, does the feeding of sharks change the populations of other organisms that the sharks would normally be feeding on? And does that cause increase in diseased animals, different types of diseased animals?
Yeah, so the first question, what was your first question again? I'm sorry.
How deep? That's okay. How deep do sharks dive?
How deep? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
So there are deep sea species of sharks, like different dogfish or catfish or cat sharks, not cat. Dogfish and cat sharks, they're pretty deep diving sharks. And also the Greenland shark, they can go down pretty deep. I'm not a deep sea shark expert, but I do know that there are a lot of species of deep sea sharks that look absolutely weird as well. If you Google like deep sea sharks, they just look a little crazy. But yeah, there are sharks that have been found like thousands and thousands of feet underwater. And then going into the shark tourism, that's actually something that we're still trying to figure out. We're trying to see how tourism is like having a indirect effect on like the prey populations of sharks. And that's something that I do want to find out going back to Belize one day to see, the prey species of nurse sharks, to see how they're being affected, if they're being affected at all. But in regards to like diseases and everything, there was a study on the the Stingray City in the Cayman Islands. It was less disease being spread in the prey populations and more parasites being spread between the stingrays. So because the stingrays are naturally supposed to be solitary animals, because they were all grouped together in Stingray City and Cayman Islands, they actually were passing parasites to each other and passing diseases between each other. So that was definitely a negative effect that they found there from such large groups of those animals being together in Stingray City.
Great questions, Ms. Shank. That was awesome. And you talked about deep sea sharks, six-gill and Greenland sharks. When you're done with this broadcast, go check them out. They'll blow your mind. They're also huge, like unexpectedly gigantic, which is amazing. So we can nerd about that all day long. But I'll leave us with Ms. Lagerquist class. Come on in and wrap us up with one more question. Just demute that mic and you're good to go.
Okay, I'm just going to try to show my classes behind there. They had like probably 100 questions. I'm trying to think of what ones to ask. One, if I could ask you, one question was about.
I can't hear.
Oh, hang on. They can't hear. Okay, Liz, can you hear me, guys? They can't hear me. So.
How about now? Share it with us and they'll be able to watch later and catch the answer.
Okay. So, how is the sea turtle's eyesight compared to the shark's eyesight? And how many teeth do sharks have? Let's go with those two.
Okay. So the teeth question, sharks never run out of teeth. Fun fact. So I'm pretty sure they have like, it depends on the species of sharks, but some sharks have like thousands of teeth and some sharks just have like tens of teeth, but they go through thousands of teeth in their entire lifetime. So they have a lot of teeth. And then with eyesight, I actually would say that sea turtles probably have a little bit better eyesight than sharks. And it really also depends on the species of sharks. But say for nurse sharks, for example, they have very tiny eyes, so their eyesight isn't the best. So they really rely on their smell, their ampullae of Lorenzini, and other sensory organs, like they have little barbels as well. So it really just depends on the sharks. So like your open water species of sharks, they have big eyes. Like if you Google like blue sharks or mako sharks, they usually have big eyes and they have really good eyesight because they can see far and they don't have like reefs or anything blocking them. And sea turtles, I would say probably like leatherbacks have really good eyesight because they're also open water species. And you know, like I would say overall they probably have better eyesight than sharks because they don't have as many other senses as sharks to rely on. But yeah, that's my answer for that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If you want to see a big eye shark, salmon shark are my like they're like the size of a great white, but their eyes are it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's very terrifying.
And you mentioned shark teeth. I just want to share for our classes. If some of you may have seen a megalodon, largest shark ever to exist, pretty awesome. So check out their teeth. You can actually get these fairly easily around the world, which is kind of neat. Carlee, this has been so much fun. I love it. We're like way over time. It's madness.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why I thought I had an hour.
Sharks and turtles are the best. We're going over time for you rock. This has been so much fun. I want to stress you can check out Carlee on all manner of social media. Check out Minorities in Shark Sciences, all her amazing work that she does with them, and the delightfully named Gumbo Limbo Nature Center. It's probably the best name of a nature center in the world.
I'll put my Instagram in the.
Perfect. Yeah, put that in the chat so people can check that out. And guys, I've got to run to another broadcast, so I'm going to let everyone go. And Carlee, what we do at the end of every session while people are checking out your social media, I'm going to bring in all our teachers to say a big thank you and goodbye. For today. So Mr. Shattuck, Ms. Lang, thank you so much.